Want to ring in with your questions, we're on WhatsApp 07748855055 or studio line 0116 482 2086, and the usual social media platforms: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, Spotify, and anywhere else that you might get your social media from. Today we've got Naila Iqbal in with us, and she's a senior prosecutor with the Crime Prosecution Services. She's been practicing as a solicitor for 20 years, and Naila is also current chair and deputy vice president of the Leicestershire Law Society. Welcome, Naila.
Assalamu alaikum. Thank you, Gina. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
Good. Naila, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Right. So my name is Naila Iqbal. I've been a solicitor for just over 20 years now, I think. A bit old. And I've been with the Crown Prosecution Service for just over 19 years of that. Okay. I'm a senior Crown Prosecutor. I work for the West Midlands Crown Prosecution Service, which is one of the biggest in the country. Having been born and brought up in Leicester, I thought I needed to work
elsewhere,
out of Leicester. So hence not working for East Midlands and working for the West Midlands region. Yeah, it's a job I really enjoy, and I don't see myself moving anytime soon.
So what does it mean to be working for the Crown Prosecution Services?
I mean, it's a job that really involves serving the public and upholding justice. And it's something that I really believe needs to be done, in a way that we serve the public so that they have faith in the justice system. I know a lot of people lose faith in the justice system because of the way that they've been treated, or they've been a victim, or they've been, part of a case which has involved the police, etc. So we need to uphold faith in the justice system, and I believe that doing my job to the best of my ability helps
to do that,
in achieving that.
Yeah, I suppose it's quite difficult for victims when there's such a long delay in getting cases to court for various reasons.
I mean, the delays, obviously, budget.
Yes.
Don't get me started. The government, we have £1 billion budget. And that's not anywhere near enough to serve the public and the volume of cases that come to court, and they're delayed because of the fact that there's no court staff, there's no court time, there's no court sitting, and to try and get everyone aligned to hear that case, it's just there's not enough money in the pot, unfortunately, which is why it takes time.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons. There are other reasons, but we'll get into that a bit later.
That's fine. So tell us, I'm going to use the abbreviation of CPS, or Crown Prosecution Service, because there's a lot to keep saying. So for listeners out there, CPS. So how does the CPS and police work together?
So CPS is responsible for prosecuting all crimes in England and Wales. We cover England and Wales, and we make the decisions in cases. So the police's role is to gather evidence, to investigate a crime once it's been reported, and for them to then take statements, gather exhibits, and then present a file to us. Okay. And that's not in every single case. It's in cases that are serious, anything that, other than, a straightforward shop theft or an assault, just a common assault, the police can charge if it's not denied. If they're denied offences and they involve anything with regards to domestic abuse or anything that may be heading towards the Crown Court for a serious sentence, anything of that nature has to come through CPS. Right. The police cannot charge without consulting us and without us reviewing the evidence. So our job is to obtain the file from the police, go through the evidence, and decide whether or not there's sufficient evidence to prosecute that individual. Okay. And obviously we have a test that we have to apply to every case, and it's a two code. It's called the full code test for Crown prosecutors, but it's in two parts. The first part is there sufficient evidence? And that's obviously a big one. But we also have to consider whether or not a case is in the public interest to take further. Okay. So is it in the public interest to prosecute? Firstly, is there enough evidence to prosecute this person for this crime? And secondly, is it in the public interest to pursue the matter against them?
Can you think of any examples where it wouldn't be in the public's interest to take something forward?
Yeah, there's plenty. There's, for example, if it's a youth and he's committed a crime, it is a very serious crime, but it's his first time he's ever been in trouble with the police. There's been some reparation, so he's done some work to show that he's obviously remorseful and stuff like that, whether it would be in the public interest to prosecute him and criminalise him. So we have to consider things like that.
So you might go through a rehabilitation type route with him.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. The first thing with youth is, well, 9 times out of 10 is not to prosecute. If they have another way out, if there is another way for them to rehabilitate without criminalising them, and then that is the way that we go. That is the route that we go down, and the police are told to do that, to investigate, to see whether or not there are other ways. They have the Youth Offending Service who deal with youths, and they put forward plans and rehabilitation orders, etc., reparation orders. So, for example, if a youth assaulted someone, if they write a letter of apology, if they attend a course to show that, you know, this is clearly not thinking, they weren't thinking straight, and this is going to assist them in future with regards to the way they deal with situations, and they've made a full and frank admission in their interview, we don't charge.
Okay.
We won't 9 times out of 10 charge unless it's an extremely serious situation.
Yeah. There's a new show out that I keep hearing about. I'm not watching it myself because obviously I'm busy fasting.
No TV in Ramadan.
But there's a show called Adolescence. Have you seen it?
No, I've heard a lot about it. And it's on my list
to watch after Ramadan.
It's about a 13-year-old boy.
Yes. Who's killed a girl of the same age or something.
Yeah, I can't wait to watch that one. I'm really excited about that. They have had a lot of some backlash, but also some really reviews. So.
I saw there's a doctor, female doctor, Muslim lady that I sometimes look at her stuff, and she was talking about it yesterday, and what she was saying is that it's not a whodunit show. It's not about whether he was guilty or not. It was about the mindset.
Oh, okay. So we know that he's done it. It's not, you know.
And why he's done it, because as far as he was concerned, killing the girl wasn't the problem. Sorry, spoilers. But killing the girl wasn't the problem. It was for him. He didn't think he did anything wrong because he didn't do anything to assault her, you know, sexually or otherwise.
Right. So if it didn't involve that, he felt as though it wasn't.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a critique about where our young people are going these days, and some of the influences that they have online and things like that. So they're critiquing how our young people are developing. And I was thinking,
that
you know,
mindset that it's okay as long as you've not done anything that's outside
that's
of the
deviant.
box.
Indeed. So it's just
terrifying.
Yeah. Really. So I was just thinking about it with the youth offending team, and you know what sort of cases that they might be getting.
Oh, they must. There are extremely serious cases, and they do involve deviant behaviour quite often. Wasn't reported so much back in the day, but now we're getting a lot more, and it's really terrible to see. And they clearly need intervention rather than punishment. And we do try and, Youth Offending Service are an amazing organisation that try and rehabilitate and, you know, prevent it happening again without having to prosecute and ruining the rest of the child's life. Because something like that will stay with them forever.
Indeed. And I suppose as well, thinking about
what
children...
victim focus too. There is a victim involved in that, and you know, they look further afield as to why that situation was able to occur. And I suppose with young people seeing a lot of things online that's sort of changing the way that they think, you know, and skewing their morality. So, you know, the NSPCC are saying it's not about whether your children have seen or prevents them from seeing things online. It's how do you deal with them afterwards. How do you deal with them afterwards once they've seen it. God, it's terrifying, isn't it?
It is terrifying.
In this day and age.
Indeed. So looking at how the CPS and the police work together, where do solicitors in private practice fit into criminal justice?
So we've got, obviously, I've told you the role of the CPS, the police to gather the evidence, CPS to make the decision. And then once a decision has been made that it's in the public interest and there is sufficient evidence to prosecute, we then authorise the police via a form that we send over to them. God, giving me PTSD, Gina. No, I'm joking. They then call the person back into the station, or if they're in custody, they charge that person with that crime. They then have a court date. They have to attend. If they're in custody, the court date will be in the morning the following day. There is a court running every single day of the year except on, I think, Good Friday and Sundays.
Right, okay.
We have a court on, and Christmas Day. We have one on Boxing Day. We have one on, you know, various other bank holidays, Bank Holiday Mondays. There's always a court because keeping someone in custody for longer than a certain amount of time is illegal as well. So, so they appear the following morning, or they appear in a date in the future, and they come to court, and they need a representative, and that's where the defence come in. So a solicitor then represents them because they've got to protect their client's interest, and they deserve to be represented because they are innocent until we can prove them guilty.
Yeah.
So everyone that walks into that courtroom until they've been convicted, in the eyes of the law, are innocent until the CPS can prove their case beyond all reasonable doubt, and then the person, if they are convicted, before the court.
I always worry about the semantics of until proven guilty.
Okay,
Because it might sound like they're guilty, we just have to prove that they are guilty.
No, honestly, we have to change that mindset because people are, oh, he's in court now, so therefore that person's guilty.
Yeah.
Or they're on bail for a criminal offence, so therefore they're guilty. No, that's not the case.
But that's what social media does
That's
for
what
you,
social
isn't
media
it?
does for you. As soon as you're in trouble with the police, or you're on bail, or you've been, had your collar felt or whatever they call it, you're guilty. And that's not right.
Yeah.
Because that person may well be innocent. I've had cases where I'm in the middle of a trial and we're prosecuting this person, and obviously they've passed the code test, and it's evidentially they're guilty. It's in the public interest to prosecute them, and then I'm in the middle of a court case and they're giving evidence, or one of the other witnesses giving evidence, and I automatically think, hang on, no, it doesn't sit right.
Yes.
Yeah. And thankfully, I'm in a position in my career where I can, at that point, ask for time and
so we consider
assess and offer no evidence against them. Because if I am in doubt, why shouldn't a judge and jury be in doubt?
Yeah.
Why, if as a prosecutor, if there is doubt in my mind, they need to be given that benefit of that doubt.
Indeed.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So
I
hopefully that mindset can change.
I never forget the time when I was in law school and I was shadowing a barrister, and his client was apparently picked out of a row of photos, and when we got into court and the witness was asked to pick the person out of the row of photos that they'd already identified him from, he wasn't actually on the list of photos.
Yeah, well,
yeah, indeed.
And you hear about miscarriages of justice all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, not as many,
Yeah.
but they can easily happen.
Yeah.
Because
indeed.
everyone's human at the end of the day, and
Yeah.
Allah knows best.
Indeed. You said that you can't hold people on what was it? Not remand. In remand? In custody.
Yeah.
You can't hold people in custody for a longer period of time. How long can you actually hold someone
so
for?
if, for example,
Or the police can hold someone
you were
for, I should
arrested
say.
today, Gina, and we
Please
took you
no.
into custody. The police have 24 hours to keep you there and investigate and decide whether or not they want to keep you there longer. And what they have to do within that 24 hours is obviously check you into custody, do the usual things that they do, fingerprints, etc. They then have to interview you within that 24 hours. And in that 24 hours, if they are deciding that they want to keep you in custody, they have to then gather the evidence within that 24-hour period. They have to go and take statements from people who may have seen you doing this crime, and bring everything and get some sort of a file together to come to CPS. So, for example, a red charging day. So I'm on a red charging day from, for example, 11 o'clock till 7 p.m. So I get cases for people that are in custody. And the police bring the file to me and say, look, I've got Gina in custody. We suspect her of committing a crime. She's been interviewed. She's denied everything, but we have 3 witnesses who see her doing it. So what are you going to do? So they bring the file to me, and then we have about an hour and a half to do that advice, to go through all the evidence. But on that case, for that case, we don't have to apply what we call the full code test.
Okay.
So we don't have to apply what we think is sufficient evidence to prove the case.
Yeah.
We just have to have a reasonable suspicion. So we have a threshold test, it's called. And we applied that, and then I write that down and I say, yep, further evidence can be obtained within a reasonable time frame. There is suspicion that she's committed the crime. We should keep her in custody because of her previous convictions, etc., etc. And then I send it back to them, and then they charge you and they keep you in custody that night.
Right,
and that all has to be done within 24 hours.
Okay.
So my advice has to be done within that 24 hours as well.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And then they keep you in for court the following morning.
So once you're charged, how long can they hold you for at that point?
Oh, once you're charged, once you're charged, you have to appear before the next court.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then is that to plead?
That's for your plea hearing.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But if they were not charged, if it's a really serious case, for example, a murder or something, along those lines, they can always extend that 24 hours. They have to get permission to do so from an inspector, and then there's other procedures, but they can extend that to 36 hours.
Right, okay.
Have you ever watched that show, 24 Hours in Police Custody? And then they go, well, CPS are asking for further work, we need to get an extension. So then they go and get an extension on their time to gather more evidence. Because there has to be some sort of a case to keep you in. Otherwise, then they just bail you and off you pop, and you've come back in 4 weeks' time before the magistrates.
Oh, right, okay.
Because every case starts in the magistrate's court.
Yeah.
So even if you had committed keep saying that, sorry, Gina. Even if you had committed a murder.
If a third party had committed a murder.
You'd be in custody for that. But had it been anything serious, you'd appear before the magistrates, and then they'd send your case to the Crown Court from the magistrate's court. Right. So every case starts in the magistrate's court, from a petty shop theft to a murder.
Okay. Are there any sort of crimes where they can keep you longer without
charge?
Yeah,
definitely. Cases like that. So if they got that 36 hours, they can always extend it a bit.
But I mean, beyond the 36 hours.
Oh no, I don't think they can actually. Now you're testing me.
I don't remember. Oh gosh, I can't remember what year it was. But when the war on terror was a big thing and whatever, and they were talking about extending. Without having to ask for permission and things like that. Is that a thing?
Yeah, that was mainly for remanding people after they've had their charge. So we charge on a threshold. They go before the court the following day. The court still know that CPS haven't got their house in order.
Yeah.
And we ask for remanding custody at that point.
Right. Okay.
And as a blanket, I remember when those riots were happening and I was in court. Every single case, regardless of whether it was a little disorder, they were involved in a minor case that normally would just be a slap on the wrist. Every single case was being sent to the Crown Court. And we were given, we were sent an email to say that submit before the magistrates or before the judge that every case needs to go to the Crown Court. And it did, and there was such a massive backlog.
That's
and then
public.
we had nighttime courts. They were calling them Nightingale courts, just to get through the backlog, because there were so many people in custody. There was no room in any cell in the country, and we had to sit overnight and actually get through all the work.
Yeah, one worries about due process when we're looking at things like that. Yeah.
No comment on that one.
No, because we're not that kind of show.
We're not.
Oh dear. So how does the decision to take something to court get made? So, you've sort of covered having some kind of suspicion,
So on a normal day, there has to be more than just some sort of suspicion.
Okay.
This is custody cases that I'm talking about. There has to be, reasonable suspicion and a reasonable time frame for the police to get all the work together. They can't say, it's going to take us 6 months for the forensics on the knife, and therefore we're going to ask you to charge on the threshold, because that doesn't. It's a 5-stage approach.
Right.
So the first one is obviously is there suspicion. Second one is, can the police gather the evidence within a reasonable time frame? I mean, that definition, there's no meaning behind. There's no set rule.
Okay.
But then obviously on a normal case, I'd have cases where there's 50,000 statements in there, and I'll have 28 days to do that advice.
Right. Okay.
And then that person's on bail at that time.
Right.
And then once we've got all of that, if there isn't enough on that file, the one where the person's on bail, I then send that file back to the police with an action plan saying you've got 2 weeks to sort this out. I need a further statement from the neighbours. Can you go to house to house, or we want forensics on the car, or anything, ANPR, that kind of stuff, phone masts, evidence.
Right. Okay.
And then they've got time to prepare, and that's why cases get delayed in charge, because if the file isn't ready, it used to be before that we'd charge, we wouldn't worry, and we'd think, once it's charged, we'll get the stuff, and then the police weren't getting the stuff to us, and then the cases were taking longer, and it looked like the delay was from our end. And that changed quite a few years ago. The police have to have the file in apple pie order, and it has to be court ready for when it comes to us, otherwise we're not charging.
Okay.
So we took that control back, and now I will not charge something unless I think, this case is ready to go to court.
Yeah.
Because if I then charge it, they've got their charge, and they're like, we've got a charge, we don't really need to do anything anymore.
Yeah.
And it was getting beyond a joke in terms of the time frames, and I know they have their pressures, and they're an extremely, busy department themselves. CPS have to deal with the paper side of it, but they're actually gathering the evidence, investigating.
Yeah.
And I know their pot is not great either.
No.
So I can't hold them, responsible for all of that. But it was the case that as soon as we charged, they weren't interested in. Well, I say not interested. It wasn't as urgent.
It was. Yeah.
Yeah. They want to get that
different
charge,
priorities,
and they will give it their or if it hasn't been charged to get that charge. So yeah, that's where, and then the case comes to court. Once it's in court, if there's other stuff that comes along, there will be, but all the key evidence has to be in order before we charge and before the matter goes to court.
Okay. And I'm wondering if the CPS decide. Oh, questions?
Oh gosh. Okay.
Questions gone. Never mind. No. So
tell me there's going to be questions.
Don't be shy to ask questions, people. We're on WhatsApp 077 488 55055. So if the CPS decide that they're not going to charge, and the police take no further action, you know, you hear in America a lot about taking civil prosecutions and things like that. Is that a thing here? Do we do that over here?
No, not really. You can make a complaint against the police. There's always the police complaints authority that have to investigate anything that you feel has happened. I mean, a civil case in this country, thousands of pounds. In America, everything is a civil suit and defamation and libel and this, that, the other. And here we don't have that as much because it's extremely expensive. Yeah. You have to be extremely well off to try and take a civil case.
So it's very unlikely for an alleged perpetrator to end up in the civil court. Yeah.
I mean, if we keep someone in custody when they shouldn't have been in custody, for example,
they might sue you.
I've had that where they've kept them in longer. Yeah. It's over £1,000 for every. I think, I don't know. Don't quote me on this. But if you've been kept in, you know, for example, if we've got them in, they've been charged, but they've been kept in. Yeah. They shouldn't have been kept in. Yeah, it's thousands of pounds compensation for being kept in custody. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. So in the community, we hear a lot about young people being stopped by the police and at times searched. Does a person stopped have to cooperate with the police, and what are their rights?
So everyone has... so if you are stopped, the police have to explain to you why they've stopped you. They can't just stop you and start searching you and not tell you why they've stopped and searched you. They have to tell you the reason for the stop. And they also have to then, if they are going to search, so if they stop you, they tell you the reason for the stop. They ask you your name. You have to give them your name.
Do you have to?
You have to give them your name.
And your real name.
And
your government name.
Your government name. No aliases. But people do have a number of aliases.
Exactly.
So your government name, Gina. And they have to then tell you why they've stopped you.
Okay.
If they're going to search you, then the powers are, for example, we're going to search you and this is our reason. They then need to tell you who they are, what station they're from. You can even ask for a written record of that search.
Okay.
But they have to have some reason for searching you. They can't just willy-nilly search you in the middle of the street just because they don't like the look.
So a written reason of the search, is that something that comes afterwards, or is that something they have to give you on the spot?
I don't know. Well, I mean, they can put it in writing there and then, but you can ask for a written record. And they have a pocket notebook, and they do make a note if they do stop you and search you as to why they've stopped and searched you. And it can't be based on discrimination. So if you feel it is, then don't kick off at that moment in time. You can take it up later on. And there are repercussions for doing that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what kind of things can the police decide they're going to stop you for? What kind of suspicions?
So if they have suspicion that you've committed a crime, for example, or you fit the description of someone who's just committed a crime, that is reasonable suspicion. I think you can say that's reasonable.
Okay.
Or they've just witnessed you committing a crime, they can stop you and yeah.
Okay. And then the reason for searching, is it a higher
for
threshold?
Example, if they have intel, as we call it, that you may be responsible for, for example, I'll give you the example. It's a common example is drug dealing, isn't it?
Okay.
They suspect that you've got possession of drugs.
Yeah, so you smell like cannabis.
Yeah, you smell like cannabis. Or your eyes, pupils are dilated, or you're very erratic, etc. That might just be your personality, but if they do have that reasonable suspicion, they can search you.
Okay.
They do have the powers are there for them, but it can't be unlawful. And if you feel that it's based on discrimination because of your race or your religion, you can make a complaint and take legal action, but mainly make a complaint. I know it happens a lot and people have got that, but it doesn't help when they stop you and you immediately get agitated because if you just gave your name, I mean, it's not that big a deal, really. I know you feel as though, some people feel as though, oh, yeah, it's only because I'm Asian or I'm black or I'm this, I'm that, and that's why they've stopped me. But if you just gave your name, I think you don't really leave them with much to do when you kick off. They can then arrest you for being breach of the peace or, you know, of threatening behaviour.
I was going to ask that question. If you refuse to be searched, or even if you refuse to give your name, what powers do they have?
Yeah, well, if you refuse to give your name, well, I mean, they could arrest you then, take you into custody and ascertain your name. And why would you really want that? Just give your government name.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
It is an area where children, especially youngsters, get really agitated.
Yeah, yeah. But it's embarrassing being stopped in the street.
Absolutely.
Everybody's walking by, watching, or standing with their phones out, recording.
I mean, but then the thing is, if you've done nothing wrong and you say, yeah, my name's Nailek Bell, here's my ID, what are you stopping me for?
Yeah.
They have to give you a reason.
Yeah.
And if they say, well, we think you were down there, and you say, no, actually, I was over here the whole time.
Yeah.
And here's all the witnesses.
Yeah.
And it's done and dusted within a couple of minutes rather than prolonging the agony.
Yeah.
And it is, because it's, you know, I'm not saying that they go out looking, because they haven't got the time to go out looking to arrest people just for no reason whatsoever. They must have some sort of reason. I'm not saying that for all officers, but Gina's looking at me skeptically.
I'm just aware of other things, that's all.
This wasn't on the agenda.
Sorry.
Joking, go on.
Does anything make the police stopping someone unlawful?
What do you mean in terms of making it unlawful to stop someone?
Yeah.
No, they have to have reasonable suspicion. If they don't have any suspicion whatsoever and they're just sitting there bored in their cars and
trying to make up the figures,
let's go and have a little chat with that person and there's no reason whatsoever, makes it unlawful.
Yeah. Okay. Indeed.
Yeah.
Okay. So during the last few years, the government has made the last government has made changes on the right to protest and trying to constrict those rights.
Yeah.
However, equally, the more people seem to be protesting more because of all the things that are going on around the world. What is the right to protest?
Well, everyone has the right to protest peacefully. We can all do that. Everyone has, and that's a basic human right.
Okay.
You can express your views, but they must be done peacefully.
Okay.
So they have been given more powers, especially with all these marches.
The police have?
The police have,
right.
Especially in areas where they have been designated to control a protest. So let's talk about London. Obviously, a lot of people have been going down to London to protest. The police, the Public Order Act extended and gave them extra powers, especially in those areas, because if they believe a disorder is about to take place, they can't then wait and say, oh, can you give us your name? This is our reason for stopping you. We're doing this, and this is the station that we're attached to. This is my collar number, and here's your reason for searching. It was just too much for them. So they did extend them, but there are limits.
Okay.
And protests have to be peaceful, and if they harm others, then the police can impose themselves and arrest. They have the power of arrest, So they have to keep people safe, and this is the line they always use. It's always about the public and to prevent disruption to the public. And
it's public protesting.
It's a public protest. I mean, preaching to the choir, Gina.
So are there any limits on those rights of protest? So,
so
numbers, area, where you said geographical areas.
So before a protest is put on, the person who's organised that protest will have liaised with the chief constable of that area.
Okay.
They will have had a meeting. They would have sat down. And this is what it really annoys me, to be fair. They have that meeting. They know what volume of people are expected. They know what the designated area is, and they know the route. They know the route, and they know that we're going to have this many officers and you're going to be deployed in this area and everyone's going to move from this time. And the timings they know. So all of this is set down before the protest. But then on the day, sometimes you get police blockages and they stop people moving, even though you know that this is a protest. And everyone's peaceful.
Right.
But they're like, oh, no, it's going to basically kick off if it gets any further. So, for example, they had a march about 2 months ago, and it was going to the BBC.
Yes.
And they stopped them. They were congregating at the Strand. So everyone started off at the Strand, and they were moving from there to the BBC, and they just did not let them move. So you didn't get further than Trafalgar Square.
Wow.
And you got to Trafalgar Square, and they basically said to you, you can't go any further, you can get arrested. and there will be a very good chance of you being arrested if you go any further. And they put a blockage, a line, and they stopped people getting through, and no one made it to the BBC. So they've protected.
But if it's agreed already with the chief
absolutely.
constable, then aren't they containing people's rights to process unlawfully?
You're going to make me lose my job. Then, aren't you?
Sorry, I'm just asking questions.
I mean, they can chop and change, can't they? Because they feel there's reasonable suspicion that a disruption might take place if they get to the BBC, for example.
Okay.
You know, I mean, they were going to lay flowers. That was going to be the disruption of the BBC that day.
Maybe someone's got hay fever.
So, the laying the flowers part was going to disrupt the public. And the peace, and become a breach of the peace and a violent disorder.
Okay.
So they were threatening to arrest people that day, and a lot of people. A lot of us had to turn back.
Right, okay.
Because you didn't want to be arrested. So you got as far as Trafalgar Square. It didn't get off the ground, basically. And it was an extremely peaceful protest that day. Yeah.
Was that in February?
January, I think it was.
Okay.
End of January.
Okay, no. I happened to be in London early February one Saturday. We were going to the British Museum, like you do. And as we were walking, we realised that there was another protest, but it was more of the far right.
Oh,
so one of our friends had to turn back and go home because it wasn't safe for her to make the journey. But I was wondering if there were two different protest groups meeting.
No, because on that day there were a few people from the far right. Probably about 3 people turned up for them.
Okay.
It wasn't a great protest for them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't going to kick off. It really wasn't, and it was really embarrassing to see that they were protecting the BBC. And any bad publicity towards them to get them. You know, people would be videoing and sending videos of images outside the BBC and chanting, and it would, peaceful, but not good press.
And then the other issue, which is really sad, is around knife crime. So I mean, if we believe the reports that we hear in the mainstream news, knife crime is on the rise. More young people are getting involved. I'm not sure if it. But it's the media, it's what it is. But I understand that Ronan's Law came into effect in February. Can you tell us a bit about what Ronan's Law is?
So youngsters and knives, that is a very hot topic, and I know that this station has covered that quite a bit. Actually, there have been shows on that, and people are trying to do their best to educate the youth of today that carrying a knife can only mean one thing, that you're going to use that knife. So if anything happens and that knife is pulled out and anybody is injured, you're looking at an attempt murder. You're not looking at self-defense, because carrying a knife negates any self-defense.
Sort of preemptive, isn't it?
You are carrying that knife, you've put that knife in your waistband and you're leaving your home with a knife, and that can only mean that you are going to use that knife. And there's intent.
You're right, okay.
So honestly, I can't say it enough, and it's a topic that's quite close to my heart. Do not carry a knife, because it only ends one way.
Yes.
I mean, where are the days of just a fisticuff?
I know.
Really.
The worst that could happen was a black eye.
Exactly. And now people are comparing the length of the blade, and it's just, terrible. We at the CPS had, for International Women's Day, we had an event, and we had a mum and a sister. Really, really lovely family that came to present, and they basically had lost their son. Their son, 16-year-old, I know, and he was stabbed, I think, must have been about 2 years ago in Wolverhampton. In walking home, just a really nice evening in June, I think it was a sunny evening, and he was just walking home. He'd been to one of his friends' houses and wasn't doing anything out of the ordinary, and he was stabbed, and he was killed. The only son, and mum just did not rest. Until she got justice, she did not rest. And absolutely, her story was so inspiring. Her and her daughter came, and they were basically saying that they lobbied the government to try and get more stricter laws on knife crime. And that's where Ronan's Law came from. So they managed to lobby Parliament, get the bill through Parliament, and they had the law changed on stricter controls on the sale of knives. So where are these children getting the knives from? It's not. They're not just they haven't got your kitchen knife from mum's kitchen.
Yeah.
She's cutting the garlic
Yeah.
with. These are
Yeah.
proper Rambo style.
Yeah.
You know.
Amazon Prime.
Oh, yeah, I know. But Ronan's law now means that the stricter controls on sales of knives.
Okay.
So people that are selling knives to anyone under the age of 18 or whatever, they've got to have full details because there are now tougher penalties on them and they can be prosecuted.
Right. Okay.
So it's a real, turnaround in the law because there was never any sanctions on anyone selling the knives.
So is it like buying a gun now? So you have to sort of
Yeah,
leave
I
your
mean, I don't know
details
the
with the
ins and outs of it
shopkeeper.
'cause it's only a month old, less than
Yeah.
a month old, and I only
Yeah.
heard about it that day
Yeah.
on International Women's Day. I didn't realise that the law had been passed on it.
Mm.
But Mum came and she was saying that, you know, obviously her son. So the two people that were involved in the stabbing and the murder of her son were found. They were arrested. They were charged with murder, and they did have a trial. And obviously they were underage, so we can't name who they were. But they pleaded guilty on the basis, or they were found guilty. But they did say in their evidence that it was mistaken identity. It wasn't Ronan that they were after, and they thought he was someone else.
God.
So when they stabbed him, oh God, I'm getting shivers now, Gina. Just thinking about it.
SubhanAllah.
And it was a case of mistaken identity.
Yeah.
So he was just in the wrong, and they hated this term, but it's true. He was in the wrong place at the wrong time. And Mum was saying, her name's Pooja, that she basically didn't rest until the people that sold these knives were held accountable for selling these knives to the children. Because if you're not selling them, they can't get hold of them. I mean, it's really not that hard to know who you're selling to. So, for example, online, I know you can upload ID, you can show where it's going, you know, who's got that knife and why. So, for example, people actually buy in bulk. These gangs buy in bulk. Yeah, and then they dish them out to gang members. So if you're buying, like, you know, 15 Rambo-style knives, somebody should at least be
should be
alerted
flagged,
that where is that coming, where's that going, and why those knives being bought. Especially, for example, in this area in Birmingham, for example, they're being delivered. Or in this area in Leicester, they're being delivered.
Yeah, when we know the hotspots.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody needs to. And with Ronan's law, when the government changed that law, she said that it was the moment in her life where she realised that, you know, I'm not going to leave anything when I leave this world, but my son's legacy will live on forever because that law will always be in place, and the sanctions now to protect the youth of today are now in place and named after her son, which was, bless her. So, there are tougher sanctions now, and I can't say it enough. If you're walking out with a knife, it's only going to end one way. Whether it's possession of a bladed article if you're stopped. If you get caught twice with the knife, that's a minimum of 12 months in custody that you're looking at.
Right, okay.
Because they've got minimum sentences now for second offences.
Okay.
Same with possession with intent to supply. If you've done it before, you get a minimum sentence. So it's really difficult to think, oh, you know, I'll get a slap on the wrist, I'm just carrying it. You know, you can only carry it if there's a reasonable reason for carrying it. For example, you know, there's never going to be a reasonable reason for a Rambo style knife, but for example, pocket knife or a lock knife for business, for work. You know, if you're a carpenter, for example, but you need to have a reason for it, and you need to have a reasonable excuse for carrying it.
I saw on
Really
social.
difficult topic, isn't it?
Absolutely, and you know, what we can do is praise Allah to protect our young people. You know,
honestly,
and again, it comes back down to that. The skewing of their morality. Why do they feel they need to be in these type of gangs, and why do they feel they need to carry knives? Why do they feel they need that protection? You know,
I know, and it's, you know, obviously the old adage, keeping up with the Joneses. But these days, the children, the pressure that they're under to conform, is 100 times more than it was when we were that age. And
but we also had our facilities. We had youth clubs, and we had things that we could pass our time with. And
I think that's seen as not being cool anymore. And that word is not cool either, but you know what I mean? It's very difficult, honestly. And you want to keep up, and you want to show face that, you know, I'm able and I'm strong, and, you know, no one can mess with me. And it just ends in stabbings and death.
Yeah, indeed. So. So,
you're going to ask me about parking now, aren't
I'm
you?
going to ask you about parking.
No, don't ask me about parking. So Gina did say to me, I'm going to tell everyone now what you did to me. She sent me a list of questions, and one of the questions she sent me was, what can be done about parking illegally in Ramadan? Now that the mosques are busy and people are are going for namaz and they're parking on pavements and stuff.
Double yellow, drop
Double yellow, drop
curbs.
curbs,
You know,
yeah.
it's a serious issue for.
Gina,
for
do you want
for
to tell your viewers what my response was to that? Go on.
some like don't ask me that because I'm not a traffic warden.
Do I look like a traffic warden? Oh my
But
God.
but seriously, it is a serious issue,
It
and
is-
I've
it is
heard
an
years and
absolutely-
years
it
and
is a serious
years people
issue.
on the radio talk
Mhm.
about it, the mosques talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, we do need to be respectful of other people that are using
Oh,
the roads and the
100%,
pavements.
100%. I mean,
know.
obstructing the public highway, for
Yeah.
example, if you've parked dodgy,
Yeah,
then
Ooh.
obviously police can have your
Yeah.
vehicle towed. I
Yeah.
think they were doing it on Evington Road a couple
Yeah.
of months ago.
well,
This
I
was
saw
before Ramadan.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Good. And I also when I
Gina, Good.
whilst I was standing outside, I saw the camera because I was thinking that there must be cameras
Yeah,
on
they're
this
about
road
to
now.
put cameras.
No, there is one up. I've
well,
seen it. I've
word
seen
on
it.
the street is that this street is going
Yeah.
to have cameras.
There were cameras on
You can't
Evington Road for parking violations.
They're not enforced just yet, guys. So don't let Gina deter you from coming to Evington Road.
Please come, shop, and park responsibly.
Yeah, exactly. Park responsibly.
We have a text in. Thank you, listener. Why is the convictions for rape and house and car breaking so low?
Okay,
It's
so
like it's two-part, isn't it?
Yeah,
So
it's
rape is a
two-part.
completely different thing to break.
now rape is one of those offences that's extremely difficult to prosecute.
Yeah.
It's a charge where we have actually increased it a lot, prosecuting, but the conviction rates are low. So we get our victim, they obviously give an interview, they record their interview, so it's not something that's written on an interview, on a piece of paper or a digital document. They are in a room, they're with trained police officers who are trained to do that kind of job, and they are given their account. Once they give their account, and again, every case comes to CPS, we have been commended on the number of rape charges that have been prosecuted and
Okay.
taken to court.
Is that the West Midlands CPS or CPS in
West
general?
Midlands- CPS in general.
Right, okay.
This is something that we've been focusing on for the last 10 years because before that, there were very few rape cases that were charged because it's a case where it's one word against the other.
Yeah. Well, I suppose
and
there's been an attitude shift as well, hasn't there?
and it's to what constitutes rape.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we've had 10 years of training on it. Police officers have been trained. You know, we've got special trained units that
Yeah.
deal with this.
Yeah.
Lawyers have been trained on how to deal with these cases sensitively, bring them to court. It then goes to the Crown Court, and then there's a trial. And during that trial, you've got 10, 11 members of the jury, and the decision is theirs then.
Yeah.
And I've seen cases just fall by the wayside because the victim is not strong enough to then give their evidence.
To relive,
And the jury just cannot be sure because the defendant will then come to court, give their evidence, and counter what the victim has said and make it out to be fully consensual, etc. And then if the jury cannot be sure beyond all reasonable doubt, they give him the benefit of the doubt or give her the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah.
And that's where they lead to cases not
Yeah.
succeeding in conviction. But that doesn't mean that the case has failed. The fact that we've actually got that case to court, the case has been before judge and jury, as I said at the start of this show, that everyone's innocent until we can prove them guilty beyond all reasonable doubt. And if there is that minuscule of doubt, because in essence, in most rape cases, it is one person's word against the other.
Yeah.
And there's usually maybe alcohol involved, for example.
Yeah.
She might have been drinking or he might have been drinking, and it
Yeah.
and it muddies the waters, and it's never ever straightforward, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So convictions for rape are not so low because of the fact that we're not taking the cases to court. They may be low because of the fact that once the case is in court, the jury cannot be satisfied so that they are sure that the act constituted rape
Yeah. Yeah.
rather than being some sort of consent.
Yeah.
And then the other one is why is conviction for house breaking? So you mean burglary?
Burglary, yeah. And
Burglary.
taken without
Yeah, I think
permission or
everyone
whatever it is.
of some sort has been the victim of something like that. You know, it happens to every one of us. If they have left no trace whatsoever, I mean, the best ones are, I absolutely love those cases where I say that they've left their calling card. So, you know, at the point of where they've broken in, they've left a fingerprint
Yeah.
or they've left a bit of blood.
Or that guy
Or
that
they
checks his Facebook on the laptop. He logs
Oh.
into Facebook and checks his Facebook.
Or checks his Facebook on laptop.
Yeah.
Oh my God, the sheer
Yeah.
audacity.
Yeah.
So those cases are not low. I have hundreds of cases where I prosecute for burglary. But if you've been a victim of a burglary and nothing's happened, it's because the fact that this perpetrator has left no trace. There's no CCTV, there's no forensics, there's no fingerprints.
Yeah.
They could have ransacked your entire house but be fully top to toe, gloved up and balaclavaed up, and there's no saliva, there's no DNA. But they usually don't leave any stone unturned, especially if the victim is inside the house at the time and it's a dwelling burglary. They're classed as extremely serious. They carry 14 years in prison if they're convicted.
Okay.
You know, so unfortunately, and I hope.
Well, thank you, Nadia, so much for coming in. We've unfortunately run out of time.
Thank you for having me.
But it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you so much.